and welcome to the Civil Rights Enforcement Agency podcast, Civil Rights and You, the show that focuses on federal, state, and local civil rights issues and how they impact your daily life. Thank you. My name is Charles Bryson, Director of Civil Rights Enforcement Agency, under the auspices of Mayor Lottie Crewson, and your host. Playing as always is our theme is Ronnie Jordan After Hours, and this podcast can be seen on Facebook Live and recorded at mycitymymusic.com. Today we have a group of people, obviously, to discuss issues of trauma, toxic stress, trauma-informed services for mothers and children. With us, in no particular order, so if you want to raise your hand just so that the camera knows that you're here, is University School District Superintendent Dr. Sharonica Hardin-Bartley. Superintendent Hardin-Bartley was recently named the new Superintendent of the Year for the St. Louis District of the Missouri Association of School Administrators. Congratulations and welcome. From Annie Malone Children's Crisis Center, and I will have to expand it, I think, is therapist Jessica Hughes and residential program counselor Kenya Logan. Program Director Emily Luft is here from Alive and Well. Hello, Emily. We have Nancy Williams, who is a consultant of several school districts and a CREA commissioner, and that's how I keep my job. Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah.
Finally, we have Lynette Jones, who is the LPC, and I don't know what LPC means, Director of Adult Services at Amanda Luckett Murphy Hopewell Center, and Dr. Lakeisha Davis, who is LPC Director of Children's Services for the Amanda Luckett Murphy Hopewell Center, and the Amanda Luckett Murphy Hopewell Center, as well as the Lacey Clay Center for Children's Health, are part of the People's Family Corporation under the auspices of the CEO and President Dwayne Butler. Thank you all for joining us today, and welcome. So to set the stage, last week we heard about a group of articles called The Crisis Within, which is a series done by former St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter Nancy Cambria, who talked about the issues of stress, mental health, toxic stress, and what they do to both the mother and the child. So I want to focus a little bit and got you all here today, and thank you all for agreeing to participate on just that. What are some of the what are we seeing? What are some of the programs? What are some of the resources? How do we combat some of this stuff? So I'm going to start today with Dr. Lakeisha Davis. So tell me what you were seeing. Who's at the Hopewells? Who's at your facility? What are they doing? How are they presenting themselves?
Okay. Well, currently, just in my tenure, the number of children that we serve has more than doubled. So I've been with the agency for a year and a half, so it just goes to show that the need is increasing. We currently work with children from ages 5 over 18. We can see them as old as 26 in my facility. And most of the children that we are seeing are victims of some form of trauma.
And what does that mean?
Trauma is a crisis or something that has occurred that's had a significant impact on someone's life, and it has impaired their ability to function in some aspect. So some examples of trauma are being in a car accident, witnessing intimate partner violence, sexual assault, physical abuse. Divorce can be a trauma for a child.
Now, when you talk about that, you're saying what kids have seen and have gone through as they are out of the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And children do not have the same capacity as adults to be able to manage their emotions or deal with those types of traumas, and they express them in ways that unfortunately end up being behavioral problems in schools. An example, we had a 5-year-old who witnessed his father being murdered, and in an effort to save him, jumped in front of him as he was being shot. So in the schools, he is throwing tables, throwing chairs, fighting kids. And the school's like, okay, we have a behavior problem child, but we have to look a little deeper, and that is a manifestation of the trauma that he's experienced.
And so how are kids and families referred to you?
A lot of our referrals come through the schools, actually. We partner with several schools in the city. Family members who receive services, they will refer other family members, but we try to market out in the community. We collaborate with Peoples, so if they see someone who has medical issues, then they will refer the child over to us if they notice some mental health concerns.
So you said two different things. You said medical conditions, and then you said mental health.
Correct. So People's Health Clinic, children receive medical services there and dental services. If the doctor is noticing some issues that may be mental health related, then they refer over to Hopewell for an assessment to be completed to determine the extent of any concerns.
So I want to switch to Annie Malone and I guess Jessica.
Yes.
As a therapist at Annie Malone, what are you seeing?
I am seeing, well, I work in the school. We have a therapeutic school there, and I'm the mental health therapist in the school.
You know what? Back up.
Yes,
Talk
sir.
a little bit about Annie Malone services, if you will, just in general.
About the school?
Well, just in general, what does
Okay,
Annie
so
Malone
we have
do?
different programs. We have like our residential program, the parenting program, our crisis program, of course, our therapeutic school, Emerson Academy, which is where I am, and I'm the mental health therapist there. And I pretty much come in and I do individual and group therapy with each of the kids per their IEP plans. And I also do parenting parenting counseling sessions with the parent and the child in the actual school.
Is it geographically driven, or can virtually anybody show up and say, I need services? Or
If the child is enrolled in the school, or if they have services in one of our other programs, then they're more than welcome to take part in those counseling services as well.
Okay, so thank you.
No problem.
So let's talk a little bit. What are you seeing?
Right. So in the school, we're seeing children who are being put out of other schools due to behavioral issues, fighting, tearing up property, things like that. And they're being sent to us as a therapeutic school to get them back on track and hopefully get them back into a St. Louis public school or somewhere like that. But what we're seeing with the kids coming in is they are severely traumatized, like Doctor said. And it's our job to, identify with whatever they might be suffering through or going through and help them get through that so that they can learn in that academic setting, because it is a school.
And what ages are you working with?
Our school holds K through 12. Currently, I don't think we have any kindergartners. We have our lowest age is first grade right now, and our oldest student is in the 11th grade.
So as early as K,
Yes.
kids are responding to the trauma that has
trauma.
been in their life, whether it's and so I'm not a doctor and don't act like one, but so kids as young as K, which 4, 5, what is K?
K is 5.
5? Okay. It's been a long time since I've been there. And had kids that age.
Yeah.
But so kids as young as 5 are responding to the trauma that has been put upon them
Yes.
in their lives.
Correct.
Actually, it can start in utero. If the mother's an incredible amount of stress in utero, the cortisol that's released can really impact the development of the child, and then what happens from birth on.
And we talked about that last week as how kids are responding to that in utero, and when they come out, how that manifests itself. So you're seeing kids put out of school, or I guess I'll use that term, put out of school. You're seeing kids who are violent. I'll use the term angry.
Yes.
What else? What am I missing?
Traumatized. They're afraid. They're scared. They don't know who to trust, what to trust, where they can go to get trust. And those are the type of children that we're dealing with on a daily basis at Annie Malone.
Is this when I read one of the articles, they talked about fight or flight.
Yes.
Is that this response?
Yes.
Is I'm either going to run from you or I'm going to beat you up?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Well, those
sir.
kinds of, and so let's talk about the referral. Is a referral the mom saying, I can't handle this? Because I know you have several different sections of Annie Malone, so
Right.
we'll do that. But is this a sort of a self-referral of the mom saying, I can't handle this anymore?
I think it depends on the program. Like in residential, the parents have the option. But most of the referrals, I think, come from other schools, the district, places like that.
I want to. So kids as young as 5 are exhibiting behavior that we know later on would are triggers for other things.
Correct. Yes.
Are your programs, and I'll get to you in a minute, Dr. Harden, are your programs full? Or are they, we we could work with a lot more parents and kids, or kids and parents, either a funding issue or whatever, but you've got space at the end for more kids and more parents?
We do have space for more kids and more parents. We want to get more children and more parents into each program, especially programs like our parenting program, our crisis program, and even the school. We'd like to get more folks in and allow them to use those benefits in their city, close to where they live, that look, in the neighborhood that they are in. They could use those benefits, especially close to home in the city where they are.
Dr. Davis, you got room at the end?
Well, we're constantly looking to grow and expand. So we are creating programs regularly to meet the need of the children. We primarily see children in North St. Louis City, but we do have kids that are out in the county. We have kids that are as far out as St. Charles, because we try not to turn away if there's a need, even though they're not in our catchment area. But there's always a need for clinicians who are trained, because there are so many children who need the service.
It is not lost on me, and I didn't figure that out till this morning. It is not lost on me that my entire guest list today were all female, which is very odd, because I very on purposely, next week we'll be talking about black males, and I will have nothing but a black male cast, so we're okay. But are we seeing more boys, more girls? Is it even? What are we seeing?
I'm seeing more boys, more African American boys.
Sometimes young girls present in different ways, and they disassociate. So it may not be aggressive behavior. It might be more of the flight. They disassociate, they avoid, and sometimes they're not the kids that are referred, I think. So it's sort of a gender thing sometimes, not always. I hate to
Well, they're quiet.
Is it because boys are more aggressive, just out there? I'm going to beat you up part of fight or flight means they're going to be more aggressive to other folks versus the females?
The research looks at it in terms of the difference between...
Emily?
Yes.
Who are you?
Oh, hi, I'm Emily.
From?
I'm the program director at Alive and Well Communities. And so when we look at the research, it talks about a difference between internalizing and externalizing dysregulation. So those are the fancy words we use. And basically what it means is that how the impacts of trauma show up are in part based on who we are and how we're socialized. And so we know that our little boys and our little girls are raised differently. From pretty early on, our girls are given more social emotional vocabulary words to use. A lot of our little boys are told when they're sad it's not okay to cry.
Exactly.
That's going to impact then how we see the dysregulation present. And the reality is that if you've got a child in a classroom who's externalizing those behaviors, they're a lot more likely to be disruptive to the educational environment, a lot more likely to be a threat or perceived as a threat to safety, whereas internalizing behaviors might be the one quiet kid you have that day, not likely to rise to the radar of we need to get this kid either out of our school or referred to services.
And I think the one characteristic that is included with the flight is freeze. And that's what Emily's talking about. And I think that's how it reveals itself with a lot of young people, males and females, where there's just this solemn look and you really don't know what's going on. And so often those students are not identified, but are really still struggling with a lot of trauma internally.
Or they're misdiagnosed. We have a lot of children who may seem inattentive, and we label them with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, when really they have experienced a trauma and that is how they're managing it. So we have to be aware. We can so easily jump to, oh, they have ADHD, oh, they're ODD.
Right.
And so we really have to dig a little deeper and do assessments to determine if that's what it really is, or is it this trauma that is manifesting in this manner.
Which sort of gets us to the mom part of this scenario is, and what was told to me last week happens, and I'll agree with, is a lot of moms and grandmothers, I'll say that too, don't want to bring their kids in for a wide variety of reasons. They don't trust the system. They think their kids are going to be labeled or mislabeled. They think medication is going to take place when we're talking about African American kids. All those kinds of issues lead us down a very wrong, dark path. So the question is, you see a kid that's presenting certain issues, what then do you do with the mom, the family, to begin to have some support systems set up? Who wants to go first? And you can't talk yet.
Well, at Annie Malone, we do have the parenting program, and in that program, we offer different classes to the parents to help them understand how to parent a child that might have suffered through trauma, that might have a mental illness.
How do you explain that? How do you explain to a parent that, and I'll say this negatively, kind of on purpose to make the point, your child is filled with trauma based on their experiences in the womb or when they're born. How does a mother hear that? How do you say it? How does a mother hear that and the reaction? Either one of you? Oh.
Well, I'm no doctor, so I'm not an expert on, letting parents know what their child's diagnosis is. But I think the important thing is just helping the parent understand what the diagnosis is and what it might mean, not necessarily on their child, but just in general. What is ADHD or what is ODD?
Yeah.
Not your child is ODD, so let's talk about, what your child is.
I think the parents have to be your partners. So you ask them what they're seeing,
Right.
what they're experiencing at home, what they're hearing from the school. And instead of starting with maybe a blame game or something they hear is a blame game, you start with initiating a relationship with them, just like you would with a child, that helps them help their child and themselves without laying any kind of blame on. And you really have to say, boy, I need you in a partnership. Can you tell me what you're seeing? What you're experiencing.
Good morning, everyone. What I normally get is, and by the way, I'm the residential therapist at Annie Malone. We have our crisis line, so I get a lot of phone calls from parents, male, female, grandparents, the teachers, everyone, and they're all, my child is like this, and they're doing this, and this is what's going on. Or I get you need to come and get them, and they're not behaving, and you need to fix them. That I get a lot of that, and I just basically.
What ages? I know you get them at all levels, but is there a age to where this really starts out?
No, I've gotten calls from moms for a 5-year-old that kicked her and spit on her, and she didn't know why he's acting out, and I just basically asked her what was going on and has anything traumatic happened, and he lost his grandfather like a week ago, and she didn't know what to do. So basically, I just kind of talked to her, and I let her let her vent and explain to her, okay, this is what we need to, you may need to do. This is, maybe have him talk to his pediatrician, and then maybe talk to a psychologist, and then go from there. And I just basically build a rapport with her and basically talk to her, and she was perfectly fine. No issues, no nothing. She didn't, come off like she was upset or any of that nature, sir. But it's just basically talking to the mother and explaining to them, this is what may be happening. And that's about all.
So the question, you do have mothers who, for whatever reason, have a concern.
Yes.
And say, there's something going on here that I just can't handle.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to reach out to this group not knowing what that outcome is going to look like.
That's correct, sir. And we get the calls that.
It's just Charles.
Oh, sorry, Charles. It's the military training. I apologize. We get the calls where, the mother she's crying, don't know what to do. You can hear the babies in the background. She's overwhelmed. They're getting evicted. They don't have any water or electricity. And I have to just let her cry. I let her cry. I let her let go and talk to her about what's going on. And I refer her to our parenting program and get her some, assistance and let her know of our resources. And normally we just, try to help take care of the kids and, help her with finding a place. And we also partner with Better Family Life. And we just recently had a family, I think it was a family of 9 that we assisted, Annie Malone assisted with housing and partnered with Better Family Life and got them all taken care of, sir. So,
Lynette, how are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing well.
How was your travel? Never mind. So you're director of adult services.
Yes.
What are you seeing? Tell me what's going on with Annie Malone Hopewell. I'm sorry, that was really, really bad. Amanda Luckett Murphy Hopewell. There we go.
For me, I've worked on the kids side and the adult side. And I've been in the field 24 years, and I still see the same things. And early intervention is the key. And I think when it comes to working with parents, educating them much sooner, and not just when they suspect that there's a mental illness, but educating people long before that occurs, and making everyone that works with children educated. I found that and even with my adult clients, when they typically identify that there's a problem, it is because of a lack of parenting skills. Because as a child, they can physically control their children. And I don't mean physical abuse, but if my child's misbehaving at the kitchen table, I can physically remove them from the table, which doesn't cost me to have to parent, talk to my child. Then when that child becomes 10, 11, 12, and I as a parent can no longer physically control that behavior, that is when they reach out for services. And again, I see, as a parent, I see that as a behavior issue. And the parent becomes more focused on the behaviors, not necessarily the cause and effects. Now, on the adult side, I typically find that half of the men and women that we work with had some type of services, but years down the road. I mean, not down the road, but prior, where they were 12, 13, 14, 15. And then they dropped out of services and they show up in their 30s. Or they've never received services. They were kind of shut down. My child's not mentally ill. The stigma. And starting in the field in 1994 and today, I see the same clients. And I've also worked in the prison system. And it was really eye-opening because I really saw my kids in our corrections program. So,
which you could have marked that page in their file already, it sounds like. Soon to be in jail, sooner, later to be in prison.
correct. And again, it's the stigma. And to have a 35-year-old male sit in an intake crying because, again, it's the behaviors that have caused them to be in our criminal justice system that were behaviors that were never dealt with. They were suspended. They were expelled. and then now they're 18, or they were in our state custody. And then at 18, they're released with nowhere to turn. So for me, to keep what everyone's been talking about, the children out of adult services, we have to educate and continue to educate and to recognize the signs a lot sooner. You know, it is the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. And our kids are crying out for help, and we really need to provide wraparound services. And not, I mean, meeting the basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, water. And we really can't provide any services until those basic needs are met. Because if I'm hungry, then I really don't have time to listen to the therapist come and talk to me about my son or daughter's behavior. But I do see that the materials, the studies, the training that's going on now is much more encompassing. That we're not just looking at behaviors, we're looking at the whole person.
Right. Let me get Dr. Tronica Harden Bartley in. So you, how many years at University City?
I'm finishing my 3rd year.
Okay.
Oh.
So you obviously saw something, and this may be, I've known you previously with St. Louis Public Schools. You may have seen something then that you said, boy, if I got to be superintendent, this is first deal on the plate. What did you see, and what did you begin to try to implement?
So I think that everything that we're talking about today, that's not a lot of new. I think we have language. We have a common language and a common understanding that we didn't have, I would say, 20 years ago when I was a building principal. I think that some of the challenges that we're seeing are more significant and more concentrated in certain areas. I was very involved with the Ferguson Commission's Child Wellbeing and Education Equity Work Group. And we talked to a number of stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, service providers. And this understanding of trauma was a very pervasive, very profound concept that we really worked to unpack. And so it was one of our calls to action. And we were very intentional about that call. You can't teach children if they are not well. And in the conversations that we're having this morning, an entity that I think we sometimes forget about are our teachers. They're often on the front line and navigating their own traumas that they have experienced as young people, as adults. And then they're working with our most vulnerable, our most needy population, honestly, without the proper resources. So I met Emily Luft through Alive and Well STL when I was actually in another district when I had just been named superintendent. So I was wearing 2 hats. And we were a part of the first regional learning collaborative through Alive and Well. And was funded by the Regional Health Commission, so there were resources behind that effort. And so I entered my superintendency with this as my first initiative. Was it planned? I won't say that it was, being brutally honest, because I was very overwhelmed as a new superintendent. But as I reflect back, it was absolutely the right thing at the right time. So I have always talked about trauma. I have always talked about being sensitive to our students' needs. I've always talked about having a culture of being with our students and not a culture of doing things to them. And not just our students, our families and our teachers as well. So my superintendency was grounded in that work, and I'm very pleased with our progress. And I think that the training that you're talking about for teachers, for parents, for students, our young people need to know how to name their emotions and name their feelings. And we don't talk about those things in a more comprehensive way. And so,
in a more honest way, I would also
and it has to be real. Our children are real.
Yeah.
And if you want to meet someone that's real, go talk to a first grader.
Amen.
They will tell you they're brutally honest.
Amen. Yeah.
And so one of them told me, Dr. Hart-Burley, your breath smells like coffee. And so they're just honest, and I got it. And honestly, I hadn't had coffee, so that tells you something else. So children are very honest. But I think that when we take the human, this is humanity.
Yes.
This is about humanizing what we're doing with our young people, with our teachers, with our parents, with our families. They're not just numbers. They're not just a piece of paper that we pass along. But when we think about the human element of this work and understand that you have to touch hearts
Right.
before you can get to minds.
Exactly.
And I firmly believe in that. But we have, again, our most vulnerable students, our most vulnerable young people working with some of our most vulnerable adults. And I will say early childhood specifically. And so I think that early intervention, I concur with what you said. I think we have to start early. We have to begin to penetrate those systems that we already know exist and find a way to get resources. We're fortunate in U City because we have grant funding to help support this effort. I would not be able to do the work that we're doing with Alive and Well, our partners with Wyman, our other social services providers, if we did not have external dollars. Sometimes I feel that this work is extra because we're supposed to focus on math, arithmetic, and writing. But you can't get to that, again, if I am not well.
Exactly.
Mentally, physically, and emotionally.
Correct.
And so I'm just passionate about this work, and I feel that if I had the skills, the resources, the tools, when I was a principal at Adams School in 2001, I would have been able to be much more impactful with my young people. So I wonder, how are school systems, how are school building leaders, how are superintendents navigating the current state without understanding trauma? I don't even know how it's possible.
So I'm going to get to a definition in a minute, but I know that you were one of the authors of a state policy. So these things are not mandated yet in any school system. What was DESE trying to do, and what was the outcome?
So we worked with a work group of educators from across the area under the leadership of Alive and Well, and we provided guidance to schools. I don't feel that you can mandate this work. I think that would be a misstep. Again, it is a heart work, and if you don't have the right heart for it, someone mandating you to do it can be very detrimental to the people you're trying to impact. And so I believe that by providing that guidance, by providing more of a learning progression, we're not where we want to be in U City. We're on a progression. We're in progress. But it gives guidance of specific things that schools can do. One, to raise awareness and understanding about what trauma is and what it looks like and how it can reveal itself in the context of the work that we do. It emphasizes the importance of training where it matters the most. It's great that I can sit here and speak about it, but I have teachers who can speak much more eloquently about it than I can. And that's really where it matters. It emphasizes this sense of community, this sense of belonging, this sense of student voice. And what we hope as an outcome is that we will create a movement where we're able to get more supports, more policy structures, and funding to support the policies. Because we can't have another unfunded mandate in education, but we need true policies that support this work with the appropriate allocation and funding to support it so that all schools and all students, particularly those that have the greatest need, have access to the resources that we believe are needed.
Nancy, real quick, you do consulting work in other school districts, and I know you also are close to Maplewood, Richmond Heights. What's going on in some of the other school districts?
I actually visited a school the other day, Weiland Elementary in Rittner, because I wanted to go up and actually talk to kids and see what was going on. Rittner, along with others, they picked up on what Sharonica was doing. They picked up on what Tiffany Anderson was doing in Jennings a few years ago when she was the superintendent there, and she formed a partnership with Washington University. I think they got like $60,000, which isn't much, to try to start some things with trauma-informed practices with teachers. It's been followed through by Art McCoy's there now, and he's actually gotten a health center funding, and they have a health center now in Jennings as well. I think he does the Hand, Heart, and Head initiative in Jennings. A lot of people are using Alive and Well. Parkway uses Alive and Well. Rittner actually uses Alive and Well. But they use a whole myriad of services. What I saw at Weiland the other day is they use outside resources, like they use BIAS, which is the Bilingual International Assistance Program, because 1/3 of their kiddos up there are Hispanic. And culture can impact also how families respond to trauma. So having that outside resource is good. They use Youth in Need. They now have a Husky Health Center. It was funded, I think, by CARE St. Louis. and they have a van that takes the kids over to a middle school where they can get health services that may not be available otherwise. But they use, everybody that's in this, and Sharonica knows this, you use everything you can. This village thing, that idea is so important. But a lot of those strategies go back to exactly what Veronica was talking about. We train teachers in awareness and sensitivity and strategies in being responsive and being informed, all those things that Alive and Well does. And the relationships and the safety for kids are really important. Age 0 on, our Wilkinson Early Childhood Center in this city starts at age 3, and we see issues related to trauma in those kids as well. So what people are doing, they're trying to eliminate this whole idea of suspending a 3-year-old. It's just ridiculous. So what's
because it'll cause more harm by them being out of
to their psyche, to what they think
versus staying there and trying to provide services and resources.
And instead of a suspension center, I know what Wyland uses, and other people have things too. So they have what they call a focus room there, a staffed focus room. It's not a detention center. Kids have structured and unstructured time there. They may go there. Some people call them chill centers, where kids, as they start to identify their own emotions. So they go in a room and there might be a chart that's got 4 colors on it. One of them says, I'm really tired, today. One of them may say, I'm angry and frustrated. One of them maybe said, I'm willing to learn today. But helping kids have the language to identify their emotions and be aware so they can get to self-regulation. But if you don't start that early, having been a middle school and high school teacher and having taught kids on parole and probation for a couple of years that have been permanently expelled from school, trying to get to it later when all this depth has built up is extremely difficult. So if we can start with our wee ones and the parents, they have partnerships with the parents there. The elementary teachers that I talk to go to the middle school and follow up with their kids. One of them was following up. A parent called and said, my daughter is suicidal. Would you talk to them? The teacher gets on the phone and talks to the kid. And that partnership throughout the longitudinal child's history in a district is incredibly important. There's a lot of teacher training. Sharonica and folks have assured, and Alive and Well have assured that teachers are getting training. There's a House and Senate bill right now to train teachers.
Let me ask you a question though. So this is to both of you. One theory that I have is, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll do it. Teachers' unions don't appear to be in this fight. They are, I don't know that they're, I'll use the word mandate, I shouldn't, but there doesn't seem to be, I don't see the AFT or the, whatever the other union is.
Anyway.
Thank you. I don't see them out front saying teachers should be trained on, and I'll now use the term, put it in the play, trauma-informed services. I don't see where teachers' unions are doing this and saying, here's how we can really intercede or help in the process of education. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't see it.
So I will say I work with NEA in our district, and I've also worked
National
with
Education Association, correct?
Yes, and I've also worked with the American Federation of Teachers, AFT, and I will say that we have a very strong support of our teachers union. Our teachers union president is a part of one of our trauma teams in one of our buildings. And I firmly believe that with our teachers union, I go back, we have to do things with our teachers. And if teachers feel like we are, again, forcing something down their throats without giving them voice, you will get some pushback. And that's with any initiative, no matter how important it is. It's just the principle of doing things with our teachers. So I think that if we are intentional and deliberate about engaging them in the conversation at the onset about how we go about this work, I have yet to see any of my UNISERV directors from NEA, from AFT, who have balked at our attempt to help teachers get better.
As long as you get them in on the front end and have that conversation.
Have that conversation. We have to be reasonable. I started by saying they are having to, that baby that was 5 that witnessed someone stood in front of his dad, if that baby had to go to school that next day, that teacher is traumatized. The secondary traumas that our teachers experience
Yes.
are real.
Right.
And sometimes we expect for them to just put on their armor and go in there and just they're human. They're
Exactly.
human beings too. So we have to emphasize self-care. I would be remiss if I did not say that today.
Self-care.
We have to
Absolutely.
emphasize self-care and give them permission to practice self-care. They cannot take care of our most vulnerable if they don't take care of themselves.
That's true.
So I don't feel that our teachers unions are against the effort. They have not stepped up in a in a formal way, but I think it's education. I think St. Louis, sometimes we're a little bit slow to get on board with some things, but I think that with the education, with the conversations, with the dialogue, I see them embracing this, and I challenge them to embrace it as one of their platforms. We have put out legislation from our superintendent's group to our legislators to be very clear about what we feel is needed from a funding perspective. So we as superintendents, as educators, are making a stance, but I also feel that our teachers unions have the opportunity to join arms formally and make a stand as well. But I will say that they are not against this. I would say that they're right there with us if we have a with attitude towards them.
I'll take that one. Emily? I just got slapped by one of the best, so I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Emily, Alive and Well, what do you all do?
Well, at Alive and Well, our mission's pretty simple. We activate communities to heal. That's what we're trying to do. The work obviously gets a lot more complicated because what does that really mean? The way that I always describe it is there's this huge body of science and research about all the negative impacts of toxic stress and trauma, and also about the pathways to healing. But it's not like this research has just like only been existing in academia and people haven't been living the realities of it, right? So folks are not surprised when we come in and we say, hey, like stress and trauma are real. They're like, yeah, I know, right? And communities often have the wisdom about what they really need to heal. So as an organization, what we try to do is put those two things in conversation with each other. So how do we use the science? How do we do organizational change management inside systems? But also, how do we give folks who are on the front lines of healing and living in our reality, the ones who are setting our path for how we move forward? So some of what we do is around direct community engagement, education, activation. I'm really proud of the work we do with our community consultants, who are folks that we hire who live and work in areas that we target and do community education to their neighbors, to their friends, to the folks in their community, to give them the words to name what they already know, right? And then help them see their own pathway to making change. And then part of what we do is more on the training and technical assistance, as we call it, side, which is where we get to work with schools, healthcare providers, nonprofit organizations who want to become more trauma informed.
Now, how are you all funded to do that work?
Yeah, so part of how we're funded is through grants that we get to support our organizations and support our community activation work. But we also know that a lot of the folks and the entities that want to be better and be more trauma informed, they're paying other people to help them learn how to do things better, so they can also pay to do something like this that's important. So we also have a fee-for-service revenue model. And for us, it's really important, actually, because there are a lot of great things that swing into communities to do really good things, and then grant funding changes, and they swing back out. So we've been really intentional as an organization to try to build our fiscal structure so that that doesn't happen. So that if a grant dries up, it doesn't mean that we no longer provide any services somewhere.
So you do training for both schools and/or school districts, as well as neighborhood-based stuff. Is that true?
Yep.
What does that look like in terms of schools?
Yeah, so we work with schools by kind of meeting them where they're at. So generally we say the first step for anyone is to get what we'd call a trauma awareness training. Let's get everyone inside your system with the same language, the same knowledge. Everyone has the same definition of what trauma means. Everyone knows why we care about it. Everyone knows what trauma informed means. And from there, some systems and some schools who are led by visionary leaders like Sharonica are like, all right, we're all in, right? We're going to dedicate time. We're going to dedicate the spirit and energy of our staff to do the work. And we develop long-term multi-year partnerships with them to be on the ground in their schools, frequently coaching their staff, working with their teachers to say, here's what you do, here's what you're doing right now, here's how we could do it better based on the science of stress and trauma. In other schools, we swing in and we do multiple trainings with staff. So here's the information about trauma, but here's also how to think about self-care. Here's what the science of resilience is showing us today. Here are classroom strategies that work and the science behind why they might work. Here's what you say in those moments when the kid flips the table and you don't know what to say.
Right.
Here are tools to help you figure out in that moment what you do. So it looks really different in every school that we work in. Everything we do is based in the Missouri model of trauma-informed care, which really is about not a specific program or intervention that you need to roll out. It's not about a therapeutic intervention. It's acknowledging the reality that trauma and toxic stress are so pervasive, so complex. And as important as having really good trauma-specific interventions are, and I'm so glad I'm sitting at this table today with all of you, even if someone's getting great therapy, they're getting great therapy for 1 to maybe 3-4 hours a week, right? There's a whole lot of other hours in the week. And every moment of someone's life is either a moment we're moving them towards healing or moving them further away from it. So how do we set up our system so that every hour a kid spends in school, not just their hour with their therapist or their counselor or their social work, is one that's helping them heal, right?
And you also do things in neighborhoods, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
What does that look like?
So we do that work primarily through a community consultant model. So that started, we targeted the Promise Zone. And so we hired folks who live and work in the Promise Zone, developed them as trainers and as organizers. And then they go out and they know where people are and how they want to learn and what's happening. And so we really empower them to set, what does this look like? So they hold what we call our community empowerment workshop series, which covers things around what's toxic stress and trauma and what's self-care, and then what's community care and what's community trauma, and work with residents to not only give them that information, but also help them develop plans for how they're going to take this back and keep the momentum going.
So it appears that there is some sort of continuum that exists. Am I correct?
Yes.
But it's very loose, sort of full of holes, and I want to get to this point. I'm seeking crime reduction strategies versus mental health trauma-informed service strategies. Anybody want to take that one on? Just
Community.
because here's what I see. I see a lot of conversation around we need to reduce crime, we need to reduce crime, we need to reduce crime. I don't see anywhere in those articles anything about providing mental health services, therapists, other supports for people, knowing, as Emily said and Sharonica said, Dr. Harden said, what studies have already been done. And you have kids, children, young adults walking around with traumatized over multiple years. You have parents who've been traumatized over multiple years. And where are the services to begin to bring that in perspective versus we need to reduce crime and therefore let's find models of locking people up?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to state that it really has to be a collaborative process. So the schools are talking about, how they're integrating with Alive and Well, but there has to be a community mental health component in that as well. And so for us, for example, Hopewell, we are trying to infiltrate schools and provide trauma-informed, trauma-trained therapists that are on staff 5 days a week. While school's going on, that trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapist, for example, is on staff to work with those kids. Because a lot of times when we're looking in our community, transportation's an issue. There are all these barriers to families getting to the mental health center. We're trying to bring the services to the community where the families are located.
I made a note to myself about that, and we talked a little bit about stigma. If I'm going to a school or if I'm going to a service that I can kind of sneak in the door and get my mental health fix on versus a standalone mental health, everybody knows, yeah, that's where the crazy people go. Is that easier? Is it better to do it that way, or even in school and say, I'm dropping my child off at school let me go in and see the counselor while I'm there, because then no one knows,
Yeah.
and then I don't
Yeah.
feel ashamed.
Right.
And that's one of the things. I know Rittner's trying to put a counselor and a half in every elementary school. It used to be you could actually maybe get a half a counselor in a school, and then you coordinate that with parents as well, and then coordinate the whole. How can we work together? And here are some things we're seeing. What are you seeing? What can we do together?
But school counselors are so overwhelmed.
Yeah, they are.
And they're not trained.
Right, they're not.
They're not
and if
trained
there's
either.
one school counselor for sometimes 600 kids.
Yeah.
So having that clinically trained,
Right.
the person that is
Yeah.
their sole focus. So we've expanded from being in no schools clinically doing therapy to now being in 3
Yeah.
city schools.
Intentionally.
Yes. And so we are there to provide trauma-based treatment and care. We collaborate with the principals and the school counselors and the social workers. They let us know the kids who are having the most significant issues, and then we are there. So we're not just in an office. We're out at lunch observing to see which kids may have some issues we may have to work with. We hope to get to a point where we can even provide psychiatric services through telehealth in the school, so that you can access a psychiatrist or nurse practitioner without having to leave school, and come up to the mental health center. So I think it's really important to be able to get these services out into the community and expand them as much as we can.
And I also think that simultaneously we have to look at kind of the root causes and some of the soil that has created these systems. And I think that sometimes we lose sight that these systems have been here and been a part, particularly of St. Louis, for a very long time. So things like poverty, like racism, lack of access to quality health care, all of those pieces impact our stressors and impact how our communities are grappling. So even if I'm able to help them and get them the therapeutic services that they need, and they're going home every day and don't know where they're going to live or what type of food they're going to eat, those stressors are compounded. So to your question about the crime and trauma, I argue that we won't have effective strategies that reduce crime if we don't think about mental health services.
Right.
Those two are tandem.
And
We'll have quick fixes, we may have some quick wins, but it will not be a systemic regional impact if we don't address what's happening with people.
Veronica, how
hurt
do we
people
educate,
hurt people.
How do we educate the public for that? Because the whole awareness and sensitivity issue, even on the national news. Now, there was an editorial in the paper the other day about suspensions going down in the city between 2016 and 18 because of some things that were occurring. I don't know that people even read the paper. What they hear is crime, crime, crime. How do we educate the public towards the need for this awareness and sensitivity towards those things, because we haven't always been with educational research?
I think that it is dynamic, my opinion. It's not about me. And so if I can distance myself from it and say, oh, well, that was the city. Oh, well, that was that. I can put it in a container. If I can put it in a container and it doesn't impact me, but I would just challenge us to look at what's happening in our schools across the country with mass shootings, and look who the individuals are who are executing those shootings.
I think
this isn't everybody's issue.
We have to assume
this is
that
not
every
just,
kid's impacted
This is
by
not
trauma.
just a black poverty St. Louis. St. Louis City issue. This isn't everybody's issue.
agree.
You can
And
look
it
at
affects all of our children.
You can look at rural Missouri and the opioid crisis.
Absolutely.
as a-
Absolutely.
I've got about 4 minutes left, and I know there are several of you who have announcements that you'd like to make. I started with the kids. I want to go back to the moms, though. And so to part to your question, I'll rephrase it. How do we reduce the stigma that I've been a failure as a parent, as a mom, especially as a mom, and begin to have, as soon as you see these signs, you should you should bring your child in, you should refer your child, whatever. Is it not enough referrals from doctors and pediatricians, or is it we need to find a way to put a flyer in every mom's door for the next 6 months to try and recruit people to come into your services? What is it?
Combination of all of those things. I find often that pediatricians prescribe mental health medication to children versus referring them
Yes.
to community mental health centers
Give 'em Ritalin.
to receive the overall treatment that they need, because all you're doing is medication, and that is not going to heal an entire family system. We have to have the children come in and get that trauma therapy, which includes a parental component, because you can't be successful without working with the family. And we have community support workers who help with the safety needs and needing food, shelter, clothing. So all of those people are in place to help with all the things that are needed to help an entire family system. But if they're only going to a pediatrician, they're missing that whole layer. So talking to doctors to say, hey, we understand that what you do is vital and it's important. Let's link our resources so that they can get those medical needs met by you, and we can help meet the community and the mental health needs. So that's one thing. Continuing to grow and collaborate with schools, because schools work with parents all the time, and helping them understand, okay, we're here to help you and help your family. It's not your fault. We're not trying to blame you for anything. We just want you to know there's more out there. Exactly. There are more opportunities and services to help. So definitely getting the word out and communicating and helping people as a whole say, hey, like me running over to Sharonica and be like, hey, how can we collaborate later?
Anyone else?
But I also believe that that it's the delivery of the message to that mom. Because how you present it to me will automatically shut me down or make me engage. So if you come across to me as you're the problem or your child has a problem, then I'm already on a defensive.
Correct.
So the delivery of the message to the families, to the moms, is key.
Who it's from, what words are used.
Correct. Definitely.
And is it coming from a what's wrong with you or what happened
Yes,
to you?
right,
personally?
absolutely.
And that's where, if the person that's delivering the message is trauma informed, it'll go a long way.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely.
quickly, what does trauma-informed services mean? I don't care who answers. I'm just real curious.
So, Trauma Informed was first pushed out by the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and it really talked less about a specific type of service or person, but instead how an organization operates. So, are we realizing that trauma is all around us? Are we recognizing it when we see it? Are we responding to it appropriately when we see it? And are we resisting re-traumatizing the folks that we serve? Here in Missouri, we've expanded that in the Missouri model by thinking about how we actually put that into action. And so we really think about trauma informed as a way of doing things.
And everybody within an agency, from the housekeeping staff to the receptionist, are trauma informed. So for example, if you're checking someone in and that person is very frustrated and angry, to not engage with them in that manner, because you don't know what happened before they came in. Right. Lights might have been off for 3 days. They may be hungry. So how they're presenting, has nothing to do with who's in front of them, and you understanding and pausing and saying, you know what, I don't know what they went through, so let me continue to show empathy and compassion and get them checked in and through the door.
Exactly.
It'd probably be a good thing for the CREA commissioners to go through as trauma-informed practice.
So anyway, we'll move right along. I've got about a minute left. First of all, I'd like for thank each of you for being here today. I really appreciate that. Are there any announcements that you all want to make, which may include your website, your phone number, etc.? But I know there's two specific ones. Annie Malone's got something coming up at the end of this month, and I might be on a training later this afternoon, I think. So, Emily, you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm with Alive and Well, and you can learn lots about what we do and ways to get involved at our website, awcommunities.org, or follow us on Facebook, Alive and Well Communities. But two specific plugs: we have trainings that are free every month in the St. Louis community where you can come and learn. Those are all listed on our website. There's one this afternoon at Thomas Dunn Learning Center if you want to join us. But the other thing I really want to plug is we're super excited. May 15th is Alive and Well for 5 days. So we're celebrating this across the state. And what we're asking folks to do is at 10:15 a.m. to pause and do 5 minutes of self-care. So we're asking our schools, school-wide, 10:15 a.m., we're taking a pause, we're doing 5 minutes. We'd love for you to do that, and then also participate on social media, #AliveAndWell4 5, all spelled out. And so participate and really push forward and show that it's important, essential, and it's totally possible to incorporate self-care and well-being into every day.
Lakeisha Davis Hopewell. We can be reached at 531-1770. We have services for children and adults as well. We also have trauma-informed clinicians who can actually go out into schools and communities and provide specific training. We go out and provide self-care training to teachers. We've done that. We were able to go to hospitals, work with law enforcement as needed, and collaborate with People's Health Center to also get our children medical care. We're actually growing to try to provide dental services within our mental health center to become kind of more integrated with healthcare. So,
I do know that there's research that suggests to make a study of something like, I think, 97,000 cases. So their academics, so the kids that have trauma-informed practice are being boosted. You're decreasing disruptive behavior. There's emotional distress. The stress is lessening. I think Ryan Hill Elementary is keeping data. It said they're in St. Louis Public, their attendance is up to 98%. I know Sharonica's keeping data. I know Rittner's keeping data. We need to
Maplewood
inform.
Richmond Heights is also.
Yeah, Maplewood Richmond Heights. We just need to assure that the general public who thinks this isn't their problem, even though every child in my mind probably will benefit from the types of things that are being done in classrooms today to enhance the emotional and social, life of a child. So at any rate, you can take the child out of trauma, Heather, I think it's Heather Forbes says, but it's harder, you can take the child out of trauma, but you can't take the trauma out of the child easily. And we all have to work on that.
Thank you. Dr. Harden-Bartley.
Veronica Harden-Bartley, University City Superintendent, www.ucityschools.org. We're always open to talking about our work and partnering with agencies that are like-minded and have our students' best interest at hand. This is a head and heart business, so happy Teacher Appreciation Week to all of my fellow educators. You all rock, and particularly my U City team. Go U City!
Oh, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, so don't forget about that.
That was actually the start. That was actually the start of this was Mental Health Awareness Month, and then I read the article about toxic stress and a whole different thing. Annie Malone, lead us in.
Yes, Jessica Hughes, Annie Malone, the mental health therapist at the Therapeutic School Emerson Academy. We have some exciting events coming up. Our May Day Parade at the end of this month. Check out our website. All the information will be on there at anniemalone.org.
Yes, you did. We also are having a Community Day in the Ville on May 18th. It's from 9 to 3 p.m. You guys come out and enjoy yourself. We're going to have lots of fun. I would say I would definitely be coming out and just, hanging out and seeing what's going on. And the May Day Parade starts at 1 o'clock down Market Street, downtown this year, not on Natural Bridge, as everyone thinks it is. It is downtown on Market. So please come out and enjoy.
Ladies, thank you. I very much appreciate it. And hopefully we will get a good response from people who are more interested in this and how to move this discussion forward. Thank you.